So the session today, we'll actually explain what the session is here, I guess all about the training opportunities in the beer industry, which in the last few years have come on in leaps and bounds, I think, compared to the first few years I was doing it. If you've got any questions, I'll have a roving mic, but there's a fair bit to get through, so I might just sort of fade away and let Rich take over and introduce his stellar guests from around the beer industry.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Richard Adamson, Young Henrys co-founder. I'm also a part-time teacher at TAFE New South Wales, and I'm on the board of the IBA as an advisor now. So we've been working on the education front since, probably over the last 5 or 6 years, and trying to broaden the options for education. And a big part of that was to get TAFE involved, which has been pretty successful both in New South Wales and Queensland. Victoria is coming on. The other states, we've still got a fair bit of work to do, but we're getting there. We thought we'd talk about the broad range of educational options out there. So I'm assuming you've come here either because you're interested in furthering your education or further education of your staff, or hopefully getting involved with educating the next generation of brewers as well. So we'll talk through those options. So I've got a great panel with us today. We'll start with you, Karli. So Karli, I was going to just ask everybody their educational background. So how did you start into brewing, and what did you get in? What was your educational journey?
Is this one good?
Yeah, you've got a mic there as well. So.
Oh, this one's way better.
Yeah.
I got into brewing, so I studied food science and nutrition at uni. So it's basically a glorified Bachelor of Science, and it's specialised in the food science area. That got me my entrance into brewing, and so getting into the brewing industry, I've done all my brewing studies with the IBD. So I did my general certificate, which I guess Chris is going to spruik the IBD later, but and then my diploma in brewing as well, and even dabbled in a little bit of Masters of Brewing as well, all with the IBD.
And just so everyone knows, tell us about your work background in the brewing industry.
So I started at West End Brewing in Adelaide. I was a lab tech, so I did a lot of roles there, and then decided to get into brewing via packaging. So I did a small stint as a team leader in bottling, and then got into the brewing side into team leader, and then went from there at technical brewer at West End, and then decided to move to the US at that time, I think it was 2014. So that was when the great craft beer boom was happening over in the USA, and I was very excited about that. So headed over there to Bell's Brewery, which was a large craft brewery, but now being bought out by Lion, and had a number of roles. And then my latest one there was brewing manager. And then I worked there for 5 years before coming back here, and recently was head brewer at Grifter Brewing.
So as a team leader and a head brewer, what do you see the importance of, or where do you see the importance of education within the brewing industry, on the technical side of brewing?
I think, so I'm very passionate about education, both for myself. So I would not have got the roles that I've had. I also would have not got a role in the US if I hadn't done my brewing education studies. So I know we're all very passionate about the industry and do all our own learning and reading, but to have that formal qualification to benchmark across meant a lot in Australia and also overseas as well. So I am a big believer in personal education for your own professional development. The other point of that as a leader, like investing in your staff and having the professional development piece, really have staff that understand brewing. There's a great return on investment in providing those opportunities for them. You're retaining your staff, but you're also, when they know more, they make less mistakes. So whether that's improving safety or quality or efficiencies, as an owner or a leader, there's really great return on investment in educating your staff.
I guess just a bit of a segue question off the cuff. So in terms of growing from a technical brewer into a team leader, what do you think are some of the skill gaps there from a personal education perspective, or just what you maybe weren't prepared for?
I think, I went from team leader to technical brewer. So a little bit opposite, but I think, well, for me personally, it was my short attention span. So a team leader was very like production management, very fast environment. But it was really kind of using those leadership skills was more important as a team leader, but as a technical brewer and as brewing manager, really needed that strong technical background and aptitude. You've got a team of people or you're trying to improve a company, and it's pretty intimidating when people are looking at you for answers or to try and improve things. So I really relied on my education and also kept improving my education to make sure that I was relevant and current, so that it could help grow these breweries or grow a team or whatever that might be.
Fantastic. And Karli, you've just started teaching the last year or 2 years now, is it? Yeah, 2 years. Wow, it's gone quick. Tell me what inspired you to do that and what the experience has been like being a teacher.
Yeah, so there's definitely like both personal and professional. So on a personal level, I was craving that professional development piece. Like I alluded to before, really is, so the way of teaching others is a great way of mastering the content. And then by mastering that content, you also need to stay relevant. So at TAFE New South Wales, we've got really passionate, great students, and they always ask lots of great questions. And it's all, they're doing their own personal reading, so they're really up with the latest stuff that's happening in the industry. So as a teacher, I need to make sure that I know what I'm talking about so I can ask these questions, so I don't look like a fool. And yeah, from a professional piece, so at Grifter Brewing, like a lot of the brewers were really green to the industry, and their only formal qualifications in the industry was doing this TAFE course. So we are constantly improving and evolving the course, and it's just really great, I guess, to put my time, give back to the industry, and really improve the standard and what's coming out of the TAFE course, and improve the brewers that are then going back into the industry.
Great, thanks very much, Karli. Jack, tell us about your, I guess, your educational journey and your bit of your work experience as well.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm head brewer at Brew down in Hobart in Tassie. Educational journey, I did a combined science law degree at the University of TAS, and then post doing university education, been through the first lot of Siebel stuff, and then I've jumped across, Dan, and picked up the IBD diploma and completed that. Probably from a educational perspective, my university degrees were pretty irrelevant to my current role from a science perspective. I did a environmental geology major and majored in environmental law, so totally different perspectives from that sense, but it was definitely worthwhile going back and doing some more brewing specific education and going through that IBD stream.
Great, and tell us what's happening down in Tasmania.
Yeah, so Tassie's been an interesting one. We don't have, and I'm sure other than what Karli's touched on, the boys will talk a bit more about the TAFE system. Tassie doesn't have that offering from a fermentation perspective, but the University of Tasmania has really understood and noticed a gap in the industry from a Tasmanian workforce perspective. We've got a huge fermentation cohort in Tassie, whether it's winemaking, craft beer, cider, it's all sort of teeing off down in Tas. So the University of Tasmania started during COVID, you're probably all aware, but the Oz government started undergrad certificates, so they started doing that and funding that through the government scheme, specifically in the science of fermentation. And there was a really big need and a push from people wanting to learn more about craft brewing in the beer industry. From that, they have then started a pilot program called the Science of Brewing Operations. So the IBA was asked to help facilitate that pilot program. They wanted to put industry people through that program to start with, to see, one, if it was on point, if they were teaching the right course content, and two, if it was going to really help the industry. So they were really forward thinking and open, going to industry first to say, hey, what do you guys want? What would you like to see out of this? So the TAS chapter of the IBA helped facilitate that. Part of the course was the IBD General Cert course, which I'm sure will be touched on, but that was a really good value add from some core brewing qualifications outside of the university, and then the course, and then the rest was 12 weeks of general micro, chem, biology, some packaging stuff, some QC stuff, and then they also sort of did a tutorial project course as the IBD stuff rolled out, so it wasn't just here's your syllabus, see you at the exam. That was a bit more of a handheld project. We had 21 IBAs, independent brewing, either brewers, assistant brewers, marketing managers, people go through the course. Out of that, they had an 83, 81, high 80s, mid 80s% pass rate, which for the general cert course was really good. I think it was about 61% this year for the IBD general cert course. So sure, they were all industry people, so they had some general knowledge to start with, which would obviously help, but there was sort of a bit of proof there that a different take on it really helped the students get through that. So that was an interesting one. They also did 2 days of work placement. I think where the Tassie education thing sort of falls away compared to the TAFE model is we don't have that really hands-on practical in the brewery environment, and that was something that we flagged as a IBA representative, saying, hey, this is great, the more education the better in the state, but hands-on is also, if you want people coming into the brewery, you want them to know how to hook up a pump or what your CIP set is and where the dangers are and that kind of stuff. So they introduced a 2-day practical placement, which, as everyone knows, is nowhere near enough, but it's a start that we're getting people. It's not just here's your synopsis, your syllabus, go and learn this and see you in the exam. So it's sort of balancing that practical stuff. There's obviously a lot more growth in the industry in Tasmania to come, and we could benefit from more, but hopefully they can keep rolling that course out and that might develop into something that can be...
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the gaps that you saw there, and I think that hands-on practical experience is a good one to identify, and it's something that in delivery of the Cert 3 in New South Wales, we've definitely had a focus on and doing work placements throughout the entire year, and thanks to brewers like Chris as well of taking on the students. I think it's a really good place for both the students and the brewers to have a good look at each other and work out whether it's a good fit for employment. And a lot of people have got jobs through those work placements as well. It's been fantastic. Yeah. Thanks, Jake. Let's move on to Chris. Chris, you want to talk about your personal educational journey as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm here on behalf of the IBD, but I do work for Four Pines Brewing Company as well. I'd like to make it known that I've never actually signed a contract with anyone but an independent brewing company, so twice independent, twice acquired. But I started coming out of uni with a science degree, much like Karli. My degree was in molecular biology, so genetics. I was in a laboratory and in my 20s really enjoying seeing and learning about different types of beer. Lots of research going on, and through that I was offered a placement at the Blue Tongue Brewery, which is a boutique brewery, as they called themselves back then, on the outskirts of Newcastle. As soon as I joined the industry, I was keen to investigate what training options are out there, and it was a little bit more limited than today, which is it's great that we've got more options than we ever did. But I found the IBD, which is the Institute of Brewing and Distilling. It's a global organisation based in the UK, and they offer a range of courses, technical education for brewing and distilling, brewers and distillers. They have no affiliation with any large breweries or anything. They're completely independent, sort of self-funded learning organisation, and they offer professional development and industry membership to connect technical people across the brewing and distilling industry, so suppliers, brewers, and basically maltsters and hop growers. So I started with the general certificate examination and worked my way, which I think is a really great fundamental course for anybody who is working in a brewery and wants to take their knowledge of the process just to a new level. I can speak more about the specifics of each of the courses offered, or you can come and visit us in the back corner of the exhibition hall. And then I progressed my technical education through the diploma sets of examinations, 3 examinations over 3 years, and then went on to do my master's through the IBD as well. I'd say the great part about that has been it's a globally recognised qualification, and it is very transferable, which Karli mentioned. Her career success has been partially through the recognition of that qualification, and it is online, and it can be sort of self-paced learning, which is I think another key advantage, and it also gives you access to an industry network. So there is a big membership base globally and a strong local section, which is growing, particularly with the resurgence of distilling recently. I guess some of the detractions that we often hear of the IBD is that traditionally it's been a little bit big brewery focused, and I think that has been taken on board. But there is still some stuff that they have to do to re-engineer their courses and make them a little bit more relevant and recognisable to craft audiences. Having said that, the fundamentals of the brewing processes are pretty similar when you get down to the nitty-gritty across how the big guys do it and how craft breweries run theirs. And probably that it doesn't have a practical component. So some of the partnerships with TAFEs and other learning institutions has been a focus in Australia, and if there's different ways to facilitate that, or through practical learning experience in a brewery as you study, there's certain partnerships and gaps we can close there. And I guess it's a bit of expense, but I think in compared to other global qualifications, it's fairly reasonably priced and accessible. I've certainly found it's been a strong investment in the strength of the businesses that I've been in, and I think the strength of the industry. As we've had more and more technical training through our breweries, I think the strength of the beer in the craft world has been going, almost astronomically in the right direction, and I'm sure the results of the Indies Beer Awards will show that as well. So all in all, thanks to those who do invest in brewing, and I think the IBD is there as a qualification, not the only way to learn about brewing, but certainly one that I think will continue to strengthen the independent brewery world in Australia. And it's a little bit, I guess, not taken up strongly by craft brewers just yet, but craft distillers have taken a shining to it. It's probably the key fundamental course that distillers are going through in Australia, and we'd like to work more as a body in the Asia Pacific to work with more craft brewers here. It's
a good point you touched on in terms of investment from companies as employers. At Young Henrys, we will pay for your IBD exams if you pass, as well as give you the time to study. Do you want to talk a bit about maybe that? Take the IBA hat off and talk about as a brewery manager, what that sort of means in terms of the value of that investment.
Yeah, I think it's always a difficult bridge to cross, because you're obviously devoting your own money and potentially allowing the brewer time to study, and it's not easily not 100% retainable, right? So there are ways that you can structure it, and we have in the past around funding based on success rate and application. Certainly that helps in, I guess, driving not just signing up for the course and forgetting that the exam was on and rocking up without having doing any study or getting much value out of it at all. But I guess overall, resoundingly, I'd say that it's been a strength for Four Pines. We see it in the capability of our team and the problem-solving abilities that we have in the brewery, the continuous improvement of our products, and I guess the value add for things like operational efficiencies and I guess adding value for the customers in the final product as well. And that comes through the key understanding of the process and many smart minds understanding where the opportunities are and knowing how to go get them.
I think, sorry.
Go Jack. Yeah.
I think that's a really valid point. It's like setting up your staff members, if you're looking at different training options, setting them up for success. So we would always love everyone to have a diploma in brewing through the IBD or the equivalent at Siebel's, but they can be really challenging, and they're long. Like the IBD is 3 years, it's a modular year for 3 years, and it's essentially like going back to university. So just signing everyone up and setting them up to fail is not a constructive way to get your staff learning. So finding, maybe not everyone wants to do the diploma, some people might be better off doing more practical training, or if you're really fresh into it and you don't know what to do, TAFE would be a great place to start to at least feel out where you might, like said, in that lay of the land perspective, because they are big commitments, and when you're working full time, it's easy when you're at uni and you're just a uni student, but when you're working a full-time job or trying to run a brewery or doing other things, it definitely can be a lot of work depending on what level you come in at from an educational training perspective.
I think that's a very good lead in for our man Daniel McCullouch, who has sort of pioneered the lab, the brewery lab on a budget. Tell us a little bit about your journey for education.
So I never went to uni. I was just really good at failing exams, and I'll talk about why that happened a little bit later. So I was obviously working at Young Henrys. I've also been teaching TAFE, and Lallemand acquired Siebel, which is the oldest brewing schools, and I went and studied the Siebel quality course back in 2014, and I had a really good time over there in San Diego. It was at White Labs as well, and I still talk to a lot of people from that class. I then later went to VLB, and I studied there as well in Berlin, and again the experience for me, the hands-on, was what I really enjoyed. And then I was studying the diploma, and I actually failed an exam and didn't pass. So I went back to work out what that was, and I went and saw a psychiatrist, and I got diagnosed with a cognitive learning disability, which is dysgraphia. So I actually have trouble getting information out. It's kind of like a little bit different to dyslexia. And once I learnt that, I then went back and studied that exam, and I actually then passed and got 93% once I was aware. So if I didn't actually get diagnosed with that condition, I would have probably never been in brewing. I probably would have went to university. So that was kind of my journey. With Siebel, we partner with Domens, which is the World Brewing Academy, and so you can either go to Germany, you can go to Chicago, or you can do online. And it's also tailored. So if you only want to do a couple of different components, we can tailor something to your brewery. But for me, I think the going over to the brewery, going to the academies and actually meeting people and networking, I learnt a lot from people in the class, but also from the actual course itself.
And is Siebel more focused on the lab side, or is it broader than that?
No, it's broader than that. Cider making as well, yeah. Laboratory, brewing, diploma, masters.
And the modular components, could you explain more about sort of how that kind of works?
So say if you've got a specific budget and you only want to do, say, 5 staff, so you can just do, the person in packaging can just do packaging, the person in the lab can just do a couple of lab components. If you're on the brew house, you can just do particular things related to brewing and kind of tailor that online platform as an option.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that sort of gives you a bit of an idea of the range of education out there, and I guess why education is important. And I thought that we have a couple of questions, I think, Crafty.
Questions from the floor. Am I on? I'm on. But Richard,
Yes.
or Rich, I have some questions for you. Would you care to tell us anything about apprenticeships, government funding of education, development of Cert 4, and the national unification of course material?
Wow, okay, there's a lot there. So let's.
Well, you asked me to ask you.
I did. Let's start with. Well, if you can you're gonna have to remind me. So let's start with traineeships, which I think is of great interest to a lot of brewery owners. So if you have somebody who you think may qualify for a traineeship that you're looking to employ or is already have employed, you need to reach out to an Australian apprenticeship support network, and it's a network provider. Now, these are private companies, but they're fully government funded, and they will come to your workplace and go through with you and the employee or the potential employee and make sure that you qualify to take on a trainee. Go through all the paperwork that's required for that, and then tell you about any incentives there are to take on a trainee. And there's been some pretty big incentives of late, and they usually come in the form of cash payments upon completion. So certainly worthwhile pursuing if you want to go down that path and you've got someone who you think qualifies. Generally, the qualification is that it's the first or second tertiary qualification that the person is receiving. There will be a training plan that you need to sign up on, and that's really to say that you'll give that candidate the trainee the opportunity to learn different parts of the manufacturing process. You just won't put them on the dream crusher, as we call it at Young Henrys, the keg filler and cleaner, but they'll get an opportunity to go around the brewery and experience all parts of it, and you'll support them in their training. There is obviously the formal training component, so it needs to be attached to a TAFE. TAFE New South Wales will cover you from any part of the region, so we do the lectures online, and then we'll do some block practicals, so you can come in and do that part. But most of the hands-on practical learning will be within the brewery. I think Queensland we can do it as well. We can also do it down in Victoria. The other states we're working on to get the educational support for that. Part two question was
other forms of government funding.
Other government funding. So I think that's pretty much around the Certificate 3 and how what the costs are for that. So there is government support for that, regardless of whether the people are trainees or not. So traineeship, that course is free. It's fully funded. In New South Wales, we've managed to get Certificate 3 on the list, which is called Smart and Skilled, which is, I think it's accessing federal funding through a New South Wales application of it, which means I think if it's your first or second tertiary qualification, the cost comes down from $8,000 down to $2,000. If you're working within Australia, you're an Australian citizen, I think it's probably half that in terms of the discount. If you're an overseas student, it's probably $8,000. So the government support's there. I think up here in Queensland, it was free for the last year or so. So that's part of the craft beer strategy that the IBA has been working on with the state government up here. We're about to re-sign the new one. So that's we've made sure education's a platform on that.
Is all this information within the IBA resources on the website?
It is. When we've pointed you to the network providing that I talked about. I can't recommend one provider over another, but just go and see which one's the local one. They'll come out and it's a free service.
You already talked about development of Cert 4 as well?
Development of Cert 4. So Certificate 3 is aimed at new entrants to the industry. So the sort of learning outcome we're after for that is that some of the students will have a good background knowledge in brewing. They're able to work under supervision in a brewery and not be a danger to themselves or others, which is important. But have a good grasp of the fundamentals of brewing. Cert 4, we're in the process of writing now in New South Wales. It's aimed at head brewers, production managers, senior brewers, and probably business owners. So we're in the mix of all the technical brewing side of the education. We wanted to throw in some of the soft skills that we talked about, I think around team leadership, small business finance, production management. I'm currently writing the unit for designing an artisan food production facility, so you've got an idea of what that may be if you're doing a greenfield site or looking to upgrade your facility as well, which is an absolute beast at the moment to write, but good content.
And then just about national unification of course materials.
Yeah, look, that's something we're working on. It's not as easy as it sounds. It should be one set of training materials I would like to see for both Cert 3 and Cert 4. There is some IP issues that we have to get around in that each TAFE seems to want to own it and then license it. But we will continue to advocate on that front to try and get one unified course material across it all. Really, the qualification, it's got guidelines that it should be pointing in the same direction, but we all know that that's not the case, and maybe quality may vary, or the depth of material may vary as well, but we're working on it.
All right, that's the end of the planted questions. Do we have any other questions from the floor? Yes.
With regards to the structure of the Cert 4, where do you see that placed against the IBD structure or Siebel, like in terms of course depth and content?
Yeah, there's not a direct mapping, I guess. So where it sits in the Australian qualification framework is, so a Cert 3 is sort of vocational education. So that's probably year 10 to year 12 equivalent. And Cert 4 sits in between your HSC and your diploma. I guess your university diploma is where it's sitting. So some of the units that we are writing are at, they've got a 5 in front of it, which means it could be part of a diploma level education. So it's getting up there in terms of what level of sophistication in education needs to be. I guess the foundation skills you need to have to be able to complete that course as well. There's no prerequisites, but you need to have a good solid grasp of mathematics and English to be able to pass on that one. Chris, I don't know if there's been any work done mapping the IBD to the Australian Qualifications framework?
No, not that I know of. The diploma, it goes quite deeply into the engineering, the biochemistry, the microbiology, the agronomy that I guess makes up different components of the brewing process. So as Richard said, you do have to have a deeper understanding and be comfortable with maths and some of those scientific concepts. So certainly if you've got a university qualification, it's pretty approachable. Otherwise, I mean, for us, I think the general certificates are really good, broad reach, I think accessible to most. As Dan said, it's not for everybody's style of learning, and we don't claim to be, the perfect solution. That's, I think, why it's so great to have a breadth of options. But I think through the general certificate, you can understand whether or not you're ready to take the next level of depth in your training through the diploma.
Probably worth mentioning too that within the VET, the vocational education framework, there's not a pass-fail. We are looking for the delineation is competent or not yet competent. So if you do not pass, it doesn't mean that's the end of your journey and you've got to start again. We'll really work hard to get you over the line as much as possible. There's really good support now for the different forms of education and support for people that maybe have difficulties with languages or mathematics or learning disabilities as well. So there's a lot of support there. As I think the message we really want to get out is that there's not one size that fits all here. There's, depending on your educational needs and how you like to learn, there's a whole bunch of different options out there.
Well, the question was, okay, yeah.
Kind of a two-parter. How do you guys kind of approach when you're training green brewers, fresh brewers, when everybody kind of walks into this industry with wide variety of backgrounds? How do you kind of approach the general brewing training during that? And then after, say somebody finishes their TAFE course, how do you kind of motivate somebody to go further thereafter?
Yeah, good questions. I might hand those over to people that are managing breweries over here.
I mean, I think from a starting perspective, it's really important to keep them, especially if they haven't worked in a production brewery. We come from a production brewery background, but keep them safe. So teach them the essential things just to be in that kind of workplace, because as most people in the room know, they're very varied workplaces with different hazards. That's the biggest one to start with. And then depending on what you've hired them at, or if they're not sure and they want to start, give them some variations. So don't just stick them on the, what do you call it, the soul crusher or the dream crusher or the packaging line for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, because you won't get the most out of them. You might punish them and they might feel like they've got to do the time, and you'll get them for a few years packaging, which always solves some problems from a headache perspective for managing staff, but you won't get the most out of them. So find the things that they're interested in. Mostly we find people come to us and they're like, I want to be a brewer. You still have to teach them the packaging and the cellar work, and it's really, different in bigger size breweries, but we always like to train people so they can do a bit of everything, whether or not they might not end up being a packaging manager or running the pack line. I still want that person, if they're on a evening brew shift and the pack line goes down, I want them to be able to come down and help and pick up some tools and say, oh, you know, I think this motor bearing and this motor's shot. Or so being able to give them some exposure. Obviously, the bigger your breweries get, the harder it is to be able to split your staff over different areas. But from a small to medium-sized brewery, I think that's a really key way to keep them interested. And you might find from a progression about what they want to do next is if you give them the exposure to different areas, they might actually find their niche. And we've found the more you can grab that and get someone motivated and interested, even if it's micro or something really small from a part of the brewing process, you're more likely to keep them engaged and give them some care factor about their job on a daily basis.
Yeah, I agree. Like individuals, they need to shape their own career development plan and their own career goals. But if you're meeting with them and working with them and then understanding that, and like Jack said, providing them experience and opportunities and insights into different areas, you can then work on their specific development needs to work with them to see what they want to get to.
We have also, I've heard of other breweries doing this too, linking like sort of promotions to the achievements of certain qualifications. For example, you might go for an assistant brewer role to a brewer with some sort of qualification being part of the, I guess, the criteria to achieve that. Yeah, we certainly, Young Henrys, we certainly link formal education with workplace behaviours that we want to see for people to grow into leadership roles. And interesting too, I think, in terms of the students we see coming through TAFE, that we're probably hitting those key spikes that we saw in Bernard Salt's population demographics look, and then it is it's Gen Z, it's millennials, and it's the Boomer Plus, depending on where people are in their journey. So either people wanting to come in the industry straight out of school or just after bumping around doing hospitality for a while, to millennials looking to open their breweries, and Boomer Plus probably the same, people that want to do the lifestyle change as well. So we've got to make sure that the course is accessible and appropriate to all those different learning styles as well, which is a challenge.
That answer your question? Good. Yep. One more. In your hands, Lewis. How long do we have before you're gonna? There, we can push it a bit longer.
Only a quick one. It was a bit similar question to the previous one in terms of the ongoing training and development and sort of knowledge building. What's the role, do you think, in terms of sort of non-qualifications like a diploma or other, sort of degree or something, for ongoing sort of workshops, webinars, seminars, that sort of thing? I know the conferences are fantastic for capability building, but do you see a role in an ongoing basis for, say, governments to support that in your industry? Because people are time poor and they're not always willing to go and do a TAFE qualification or a diploma, but there's that sort of ongoing, regular one-day, half-day workshops, that sort of thing. Is that available?
Look, there's different ways of accessing that, but I think what you've touched on, I think, is something that we probably should definitely include in our advocacy piece as well. I think industry definitely has a leadership role there as well. So there's some great little short courses that you can do with your suppliers. I think if you're lucky enough to go to that HOP Academy yesterday, that's a great thing to be part of and really expand the knowledge you have in terms of the whole hop industry, not just the Century side as well, but talking about harvest and the like. And I know that certain equipment suppliers too can help out on that. So maybe an industry government partnership with that would be cool. Anything else you can think in terms of short courses? I think, personally, I would say encourage your staff to do the short courses that are out there that are not directly technical with brewing, but the other skills that we all need, so team leadership, small business finance, management skills. That's often the gap. I think a lot of people, in my view, probably are great brewers that fall into leadership roles that are maybe a little bit short on those skill sets.
Come and see Jane Lewis's presentation later on that very topic.
Any other comments?
Look, I think ongoing professional development is really important and something that I think we lean heavily on conferences, and I think suppliers like Dan and others do a great job of bringing new technical information and sharing it through the industry. The IBD tries to facilitate that through regional chapters and technical catch-ups quarterly, and I know that they're moving towards a chartership model, which will recognise both the achievement of a certain level of education, but also a ongoing professional development requirement. So yeah, that's yet to be really finalised or formally announced in how it's going to be rolled out. But I think it's important, and it will only strengthen us here if we can get it right.
Anyone else? Okay, great. Well, thanks for leading that, Rich. Thanks for us coming along. Anything else you want to say to wrap up before we head off?
No, thanks for coming in, and enjoy lunch. And thank you to the great panel that came and donated their time as well.